Did you know that the simple decluttering system your grandmother relied on in the 1960s can still clear a whole room 3 times faster than the most talked about apps and smart organizing tools today? It sounds impossible in a world filled with cloud storage, digital reminders, and color-coded screens. But the truth is, the older methods were designed for real life, real homes, and real people, not endless notifications. Before we go on, if this is already hitting home for you, don't just tap like, go ahead and hit that new hype button. You get 3 free hypes every week, and every single one helps more people over 60 find this channel. While you're at it, make sure you're subscribed and turn on notifications so you never miss the tips that make your days lighter and your spaces calmer. Meet Vera Caldwell, 70 years old, a retired librarian from Indiana with a warm heart and a house full of stories. After decades of saving books, sentimental holiday pieces, and the little treasures her children left behind, she turned to modern apps that promised miracles. Instead, they gave her more screens, more steps, and more stress. So she went back to the quiet, steady techniques she grew up watching her mother use, and suddenly, everything started falling into place. Let's walk through the 6 methods that changed everything for her, and why the vintage ways still come out on top. Method 1. Memory Capsule Sorting. Vera's entire relationship with decluttering changed the moment she returned to a quiet, old-school habit her mother once practiced. Something simple, humble, and surprisingly powerful. She calls it the memory capsule, and it became the calm anchor of her journey. Instead of opening a full closet of emotional items and feeling that familiar wave of hesitation, she began with something far more manageable. 1 small box, clearly labeled Top 10 Keepsakes. She set a gentle 1-hour timer, not to rush herself, but to keep her focused, and allowed the process to unfold in a warm, thoughtful way. What made this method so effective was the beautiful simplicity behind it. She didn't need to examine hundreds of items at once. She didn't need to justify every decision. She didn't need to turn her memories into data entries or digital files. She simply asked herself one steady question each time she picked something up. Does this still hold real meaning for the life I'm living today? If an item answered that question with a quiet yes, the kind of yes you feel in your chest, not your head, it earned a place inside the box. To honor it, she wrote a short handwritten note, a date, a name, a moment, a feeling. Nothing scripted, nothing forced. Just a gentle acknowledgement of why it still mattered. And by keeping the rule of only 10, she avoided the guilt or pressure many people feel when dealing with sentimental items. The boundary gave her clarity. By the time the hour ended, she had created a capsule of pure meaning, free of clutter, free of doubt, and full of truth. Now here's where the contrast becomes crystal clear. When Vera tried the new school version, everything slowed to a crawl. A digital archiving app promised to streamline her keepsakes, but instead turned every object into a tiny project. Each one required photographing, retaking the photo because the lighting was off, cropping, tagging, naming, listing a category, adding a description, uploading it to the cloud, fixing the failed upload, syncing again, and then repeating the entire chain for the next item. It didn't speed anything up. It stole her momentum, drained her energy, and smothered the emotional connection under layers of digital tasks. 3 hours later, she had barely made a dent. Nothing felt easier. Nothing felt lighter. And instead of enjoying her memories, she was clicking, editing, and troubleshooting. This is where the vintage method pulls far ahead. Old school approaches reduce friction. They eliminate unnecessary steps. They keep you grounded in feeling, not screen menus. The memory capsule focuses your attention on what truly matters, the 10 items that still represent your story. Instead of turning decluttering into a tech project, it becomes an emotional clarification. A gentle sorting of what you want to carry forward into the next season of life. Vintage methods work better for many older adults because they are tactile, intuitive, and emotionally honest. You're not just organizing, you're choosing meaning over volume. You're giving yourself permission to keep the treasures and let go of the rest without apology. By the time Vera finished her first capsule, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: confidence. Real confidence. She proved she could make decisions without stress. And that quiet victory gave her the courage to build a second capsule, then a third, and eventually move on to larger categories with ease. The memory capsule doesn't rush you, it grounds you. It doesn't overwhelm, it clarifies. And once you feel the impact of one small box, the entire decluttering journey becomes gentler, calmer, and noticeably faster. Asterisk asterisk, if you created your own top 10 keepsake box today, what would be the very first item you'd place inside? Share your answer below. Your story might inspire someone else. Method 2. Seasonal Swap Out. Vera's second breakthrough came from returning to a rhythm she had watched her mother follow without fail, the gentle, predictable cycle of seasonal swap-outs. It wasn't based on apps, calendars, or digital reminders. It was based on something far more reliable, the quiet shift of the seasons themselves. Her old-school system involved just 2 simple trunks. One was labeled in season and held the clothing, decor, and everyday items that matched the weather and the mood of the moment. The other was labeled out of season, storing everything that wasn't needed right now. 4 times a year, winter, spring, summer, and fall, she swapped the contents. No fuss. No decisions about categories or color palettes. Just a clean exchange guided by the natural transitions outside her window. When something had sat untouched through all 4 seasons, she knew the truth without guilt or overthinking. It wasn't part of her life anymore. That clarity made donating easier, almost peaceful. She wasn't forcing herself to decide. The season had already answered the question for her. This simple rotation gave her home a kind of rhythm, a breathing pattern. Every few months, her space felt refreshed. Her drawers were lighter, her closet easier to navigate, and her shelves didn't hold things that belonged to last year's life. And the best part for her, and for so many seniors, is that the system works with your natural memory. You don't have to remember an app notification. You don't have to organize endless checklists. You simply notice the weather and make the shift. The new school option couldn't have been more different, and certainly couldn't have been more overwhelming. The Smart Wardrobe app promised the future, a digital inventory of every garment she owned, complete with photos, fabric tags, color codes, frequency of use, weather forecasting, and daily rotation alerts. But instead of simplifying her life, it cluttered her mind. Setting up the app took days. She had to take pictures of each item, upload them, categorize them, and then interpret the app suggestions. And once it was set up, the barrage of notifications began. Don't forget to rotate your sweaters. Rain expected. Consider storing sandals. Unused item detected. Messages kept popping up at the worst times, adding noise instead of clarity. Weeks later, her phone was full of wardrobe alerts she didn't understand, and her closet looked exactly the same as before. The system felt like a part-time job. Instead of helping, it demanded attention she didn't want to give. This is why vintage wins. Nature doesn't send notifications. It just changes. And because the seasons always arrive, always shift, and always return, the system doesn't require memory, motivation, or tech skills. It works automatically. When the air cools, you bring out warmth. When the sun grows strong, you let the lighter things in. The decision-making happens almost without effort. For seniors especially, this simplicity has real benefits. It reduces mental load. It brings rhythm to the home. It keeps closets safe and manageable, free of overstuffed hangers and forgotten piles. And it gently encourages letting go, without forcing emotional decisions all at once. A seasonal system respects both the pace of aging and the wisdom that comes with it, a wisdom that knows life is lived one season at a time, not all at once. Which season's closet will you lighten first? Winter, spring, summer, or fall? Let us know in the comments. Method 3. Legacy Furniture Audit. The third method that reshaped Vera's home was something surprisingly practical yet deeply emotional: the legacy furniture audit. After years of living with pieces she rarely touched and rarely questioned, she finally asked herself the one question most people avoid: do I still use this, or am I keeping it because it has a past? Not because it served her present life. Not because it supported her comfort. But because it had simply always been there. Vera began this process the old-school way her mother once did, one large piece at a time. Not a whole room, not every shelf, just one big object. A sideboard. A heavy armchair. A table no longer used. She stood in front of each item and listened to her honest instincts. If she used it regularly, it stayed. If it simply held history, a story she appreciated but didn't need to keep physically, she made the decision right then and there. No second guessing. No maybe next month. This old-fashioned approach works because big pieces create big change. Removing or repositioning a single piece can open up an entire room. It instantly changes light, movement, and mood. The moment the furniture moves, your energy moves with it. It's physical progress you can feel, not just see. And for many older adults, especially those navigating mobility concerns or wanting safer spaces, these large shifts are the most impactful. Now compare that to the new school approach Vera tried. The virtual reality staging software looked impressive at first glance. With a few swipes, she could scan her room, build a digital layout, and experiment with where everything could theoretically go. She dragged and dropped icons across a glowing screen, rearranging digital furniture in a perfectly neat digital space. It looked modern, clever, and endlessly customizable, but that's exactly where the problem began. After 2 hours of screen manipulation, her real room remained exactly as it was. No furniture had moved. No pathway had cleared. Nothing had been released. She had spent her energy imagining change instead of creating it. And what felt like planning turned into procrastination. That's the trap many modern tools create. They convince you you're being productive while keeping you frozen behind a screen. The vintage method wins every time because it's rooted in action, not simulation. It forces a real-world decision. Does this item support your life today, or does it belong to an older chapter of your story? And because you're dealing with big items, the results are immediate and rewarding. You don't need advanced apps, 3D models, or digital maps. You simply make a choice and experience the transformation in real time. This method also respects the emotional layers that come with aging. Older adults often keep furniture because it holds memory. A dining table from family holidays, a dresser passed down through generations, a chair that belonged to a loved one. The legacy audit doesn't dismiss those stories. It honors them by separating memory from responsibility. You don't have to keep the furniture to keep the meaning. You can pass the piece to someone else, or donate it with love, while carrying the story with you. What Vera found most surprising was how empowering this felt. Releasing one heavy piece made her home easier to navigate. It brought in fresh light. It made cleaning gentler on her body. It reminded her that she still had control over her space, that aging doesn't mean living inside a museum of the past. It means choosing what continues forward with you. So here's your gentle question today. Which heavy or unused piece in your home could you release, not someday, but today? Method 4. Photo Legacy Cloud Library. Vera didn't expect her photo collection to be the most emotionally challenging part of decluttering, but it quickly became the category that carried the deepest memories and the most overwhelm. Decades of birthdays, school concerts, road trips, holiday gatherings, and handwritten notes lived inside dozens of mismatched boxes. Every time she opened one, the memories felt warm, but the sheer volume felt exhausting. She needed a way to honor her history without drowning in it. So she turned to the old-school approach first, one she remembered her mother doing with quiet joy. Vera chose a single afternoon and created what she now calls her Family Highlights album. Not an entire scrapbook of every moment, not a perfect chronological record, but a small collection of the pictures that still made her smile the moment she held them. She chose 12 to 15 photos that represented the heart of her year, placed them in a simple album, and tucked the remaining photos into a labeled box. No pressure to make them perfect, no need to curate every memory. By the end of the afternoon, she had something real in her hands, a physical album she could flip through anytime, one that her daughter and granddaughter enjoyed with her. The process gave her satisfaction, warmth, and closure. She finished the task in a single sitting and felt like she had truly preserved her family story without overwhelming herself. But then she tried the new school version, the digital cloud library that promised to organize your entire life with one touch. Within minutes, she realized that one touch quickly turned into dozens. Each photo had to be scanned carefully, which meant wiping dust from old prints, cropping edges, adjusting glare, naming files, tagging faces, organizing folders, and uploading everything to a cloud service that occasionally froze, crashed, or demanded more storage space. And the more she scanned, the more she found. Old envelopes, negatives, duplicate prints, photos from relatives, photos she didn't remember taking, photos with people she couldn't name. What she thought would take a few hours stretched into multiple days, then into weeks. She spent more time staring at screens than she ever spent enjoying the images themselves. The emotional weight of digitizing everything became heavier than the photos. The cloud folders multiplied. The tags became confusing. She had albums within albums and backups for backups. Instead of preserving memories, the digital process buried them under layers of organization she didn't actually need. This is exactly why the vintage method wins for so many older adults. Physical albums create connection. They invite touch, reflection, and gentle storytelling. When you hold a real photo in your hands, your heart remembers the moment differently. You feel closeness, not clutter. Digital archives, on the other hand, often become invisible, lost behind passwords, storage plans, and forgotten folders. They grow without boundaries, becoming a new kind of mess, only this time it lives inside a device instead of a drawer. The vintage method creates limits, and those limits protect your peace. The Family Highlights album also gives seniors an emotionally healthy structure. It stops you from trying to rescue every memory all at once. Instead, you preserve the moments that still make your heart lift, and you gently store the rest without pressure. One album per year becomes a priceless thread through your life, not a digital mountain. Vera found freedom in realizing that memories don't disappear just because you don't digitize all of them. The ones that matter most rise naturally to the top. And when your favorites are gathered in a beautiful little album, they stay alive, visible, and close. Asterisk, how many photo boxes are hiding in your closet right now? Pick one to revisit this week, just one. Let it tell you the story it's been waiting to share. Method 5. Digital Downsize Dashboard. For years, Vera carried a quiet frustration she couldn't quite name. It wasn't the big furniture or the sentimental boxes, it was the small, everyday items that slowly piled up without her noticing. Kitchen gadgets she hadn't used since her children were teenagers, old scarves she no longer reached for, duplicate tools tucked behind drawers. These weren't the things that told big emotional stories. They were the tiny pieces of "I might need this someday" that never truly got used. So she turned to a vintage habit that brought immediate calm into her routine. She placed a small notebook on the side table next to her favorite chair and dedicated it to something she called her weekly downsizing notes. Once a week, usually on Sunday evening when the house felt soft and quiet, she wrote down 3 things she hadn't used in 6 months. Not 30. Not a whole room. Just 3. Then she gave herself permission to decide their fate while sipping a cup of tea. Keep, donate, or toss. There were no apps to open. No login required. No categories, dashboards, or notifications. She wasn't forced to scroll through endless screens or decipher complicated icons. It was simply her pen, and her thoughts, a gentle pause to assess her surroundings. That notebook became a small but powerful ritual. Every week, she created just enough movement to keep her home evolving without ever feeling overwhelmed. And each time she wrote a new list, she felt a growing sense of control and accomplishment. The modern alternative, however, turned out to be more work than she expected. The digital dashboard app marketed itself as a complete household inventory system, promising to track usage patterns, estimate item values, and send alerts when something had been idle for too long. At first glance, it looked polished. But once Vera started, she realized she had signed up for a second job. The app required her to input every single item manually, typing descriptions, selecting categories, taking photos, and scanning barcodes. It asked her to enable permissions she didn't understand. And after days of setup, it began bombarding her with usage alerts, storage reminders, value decline notices, and suggestions to upgrade her items. What was supposed to simplify her life ended up pulling her into a spiral of tiny digital tasks she never wanted in the first place. Instead of decluttering her home, she was decluttering her notifications. Instead of freeing her mind, she was juggling pop-ups and menu tabs. The app created digital clutter layered on top of the physical clutter she was trying to solve. And perhaps the most frustrating part was the constant feeling of being scolded by her own phone. You haven't used this item in 146 days. Time to optimize your storage. This item's value is decreasing. It was too much. That's why the old-school notebook wins by a landslide. Writing things down focuses your mind in a way no app can replicate. The moment pen meets paper, something shifts, you slow down, you think clearly, and you connect with what you actually use. It brings intention without noise. It brings structure without stress. And because the notebook is always nearby, you don't lose progress to forgotten passwords or app updates. For seniors especially, the vintage method offers warmth and dignity. It respects your pace instead of rushing it. It brings peace instead of pushing notifications. And it keeps the habit small enough to finish, which is the key to truly keeping a home light and comfortable over time. So ask yourself gently, would you rather tick boxes on a screen or jot 3 thoughtful notes with your favorite pen? Method 6. Declutter-and-Gift Ritual. For Vera, the deepest shift in her decluttering journey didn't come from boxes or labels, it came from connection. This final method, the Declutter-and-Gift Ritual, breathed warmth into the process and turned an overwhelming task into a moment of shared meaning. Once a month, she would invite a friend or a family member over for coffee. Nothing formal, nothing pressured. Just 2 people, a warm drink, and a small collection of items she was ready to release. Each month, she chose 3 items, things she had held onto out of habit, history, or hesitation. As her guests settled in, she shared the short story behind each piece. This was the mug my son made in 7th grade, or your aunt gave me this scarf years ago, or this little bowl used to sit on our kitchen table. Speaking the memory out loud didn't make it harder to let go, it made the decision clearer, gentler. Because once the story was told, she realized she didn't need the object to keep the memory. Then came the beautiful part. Her guest chose 1 item to take home. No pressure. No expectations. Just a quiet exchange rooted in affection and gratitude. Some months, her friend accepted something small that reminded them of a shared moment. Other times, the chosen item went home with a grandchild who loved hearing the story behind it. Every time, Vera felt something lift, a little more space in her home, a little more lightness in her chest. This old-school ritual works because it honors the emotional weight behind things. Clutter isn't just stuff, it's stories, relationships, and versions of ourselves from different eras of life. Letting go becomes easier when someone else receives the item with appreciation. It transforms decluttering from loss into generosity, from obligation into companionship. The new school alternative, however, often turns this tender decision into a logistical puzzle. Online giveaway groups and resale platforms promise convenience, but they usually demand far more time and patience than expected. Each item requires taking multiple photos, writing detailed descriptions, posting them, responding to messages from strangers, coordinating pickup times, and dealing with no-shows. What could have been released in minutes turns into days of back-and-forth communication. And even when the platforms work, something is always missing: the emotional completion. You don't see the person who receives the item. You don't get to share the story. You don't get that moment of closure or connection. Instead, the item simply disappears through a transaction on a screen, leaving the heart still holding on to the memory without the comfort of a shared handoff. This is exactly why the vintage ritual wins so clearly. It replaces digital friction with human warmth. It offers immediate results: a lighter shelf, a grateful friend, a meaningful goodbye. And for seniors especially, this ritual helps them feel rooted in community, which is something so many crave in later years. Talking, sharing, reminiscing, these are not extras. They are essential. The ritual also builds momentum. After her first few sessions, Vera began looking forward to the next month's gathering. She didn't dread letting go, she anticipated it. It became a moment of joy instead of a task on a list. And her home grew lighter not through force, but through kindness. So take a moment and imagine this for yourself. If you could gift 1 meaningful item today, just 1, what would it be? 6 simple vintage methods, and Vera's entire world shifted in ways she didn't expect. Her shelves, once crowded with decades of "I'll deal with this someday," now feel open and meaningful. Her rooms, once dimmed by heavy pieces and forgotten belongings, welcome light again. And her breathing, the thing she didn't realize had become tight from years of holding on, feels softer, deeper, freer. What surprised her most wasn't just the speed. It was the sense of peace that came from choosing clarity over complication. The old-school methods didn't demand perfection or endless sorting. They didn't require setting up accounts, learning new interfaces, or troubleshooting notifications. They gave her something modern tools rarely offer: immediate progress rooted in instinct and memory. Old school works 3 times faster because it cuts out the layers that slow us down. No loading screens. No app errors. No logins. Just honest decisions made with your hands and your heart. Vera realized something profound: it wasn't the stuff that held her back. It was the systems that overwhelmed her. Once she returned to simpler rhythms, the path forward revealed itself naturally. For the first time in years, her home felt like a place that supported her life today, not a museum of lives she had already lived. And with each small release, she made room for new joys, new laughter, and new memories with the people who matter most. If this message touched a familiar place in you, don't just tap like, hype this video, because every hype helps another senior find a bit of comfort and courage in their own journey. Here's how to do it. Step 1. On your YouTube app, scroll down and swipe left on the comment preview until you see the hype button. Step 2. Tap hype. Step 3. Choose how many points you want to give. You get 3 free every single week. Step 4. Confirm your hype and you're done. It's a small gesture, but it truly strengthens this community. Each hype raises the voices of older adults who deserve guidance that feels warm, human, and realistic, not rushed or tech-heavy. Your engagement helps keep that wisdom alive and visible. And while you're here, make sure to tap like, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next gentle, practical guide created with you in mind. There's so much more we're going to explore together, from simplifying routines to creating calmer, safer spaces that support you beautifully as you age. Because decluttering has never been about losing the things we once loved. It's about creating space for the things and the people that still love us back.